Okay. Welcome to Wisdom Speakers Forum. I'm Leah Chiton, and I'm very, very happy and delighted to be doing this interview with the three of you who are all have some relationship to Chime, the Chaplaincy Institute of Maine. So let's just begin by each of you. Perhaps I'll just pick the order so it goes smoothly. Lisa, Myra, Craig, saying something about yourself, maybe a little bit about your own personal life and about your relationship to Chime. So let's just begin with Lisa, and then we'll just go around.
Great. Thank you, Leah. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Lisa Steele-Maley. I live in Edgecombe, Maine, about an hour north of Portland, and have been here for almost 20 years, which is a surprise. I found Chime in 2017 and was a student for 2 years, was ordained in 2019, and soon after ordination was hired to be the alumni coordinator. And through a series of shifts in structure at Chime, I am now the dean.
Thank you. And Myra.
Yes, hi, I'm Myra Robinson, an interfaith minister ordained through the Chaplaincy Institute of Maine in 2016. Now, it's a 2-year program or multiple if you need it. So I started there in 2014 after decades of being a medical secretary. Decided I needed something more creative and spiritual and to be of service to others in that way. So yeah, I was out on my own as an interfaith minister for many years. And then about a year and a half ago, got a call from Chime saying, would you like to be our community programs coordinator and a faculty advisor? So I immediately said, yes, I would, because I remembered when I went to Chime, the person who had that job, when she was explaining what she did, I remember thinking, I would love to have that job. So it manifested a few years later, and I was very happy to get back into some work after COVID. And before that, I was recovering from cancer. So very happy to be with such wonderful people and helping to turn out some great community ministers that will be able to serve the world.
Lovely. Thank you. And Craig.
Yeah, and I am Craig Worth. Just before I discovered Chime, I was an educator for many years, and then I left all that and became a touring musician, a singer-songwriter, and an accompanist. When I left the road from that, I found Chime while I was hovering and not sure what direction to go, and someone brought Chime to my attention. I investigated Chime and entered as a student in 2015. Was ordained by Chime in 2017. Immediately went to work for Chime as a faculty advisor right after that for a couple of years, and left for a bit, and then I just couldn't help but come back again as for 2 more years as faculty advisor and academic coordinator. A big central part of my life and a place that I love to serve in, but it also feeds my needs as a spiritual being. So,
Thank you. Well, I just happened to be at a dinner last night, and one of the women there had gone through Chime and said it changed her life. So there you go for serendipity. So, Lisa, I wonder if you could explain something about what Chime actually is. Maybe a little bit of its history and its intention, its purpose.
Sure, there are lots of different ways into that question. Chime is an interfaith school. I see us also as a community. We currently have 2 programs, an interfaith ministry program and a clinical pastoral training program. Chime began 20 years ago with the Interfaith Ministry Program, was born out of a vision to cultivate community, to cultivate an interfaith community in this region. And, we stand on that legacy still today, with very much the same foundation that was laid then of a program of study, of personal inner reflection, of practice, of being out in community and service. And that the program remains designed as a 2-year program, but can be completed over 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 years, depending on what students are seeking and what other pieces of their life are sort of making up the overall picture. The clinical pastoral training program is a program that had originated within the structure of another local nonprofit organization, and just last year came under Chime's umbrella. And it is, as its name implies, it's a clinical training program that is designed for people who already have had some spiritual study or some advanced theological study. So whether that be Chime or an MDiv somewhere else, folks enter into that clinical pastoral training with some prior experience. Folks who come to the Interfaith Ministry Program come with a lifetime behind them of experience and exploration, and bring curiosity, bring a commitment to their study, and a commitment to seeing what's next for them. I think you heard a little bit in each of our stories, the discovery of Chime and what it might bring into our lives, and coming with an open mind as to where that might go next.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I don't know if either of you would like to add anything to that. I'll just give you a minute to see whether anything arises.
Well, I'm thinking about what actually brought me to Chime, put Chime on my radar, was through a hospice singing group, Harbor Singers, that I was in. I found out one of the women was an interfaith minister, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then my blues band that I had on the side knew a musician named Todd Glacy, and we were doing a gig one day, and I said, so what have you been up to the past few years? He said, oh, I've just been ordained an interfaith minister through Chime. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're a musician, not a minister. He said, oh, I can have a ministry of music. And boom, light bulb went off over my head. It's like, this is me. So that's what actually brought me into Chime, was knowing such really great people who went there and all the good works that they do. And it just fit for me to help me bring what I have already into service into the world.
Thank you.
And I'll just add that there's so much there already, but a Chime to me, among the many things it is a safe and supportive haven for people to land, and for some of us, not all of us, for some of us to explore this, whatever this thing called spirituality is, out loud for the first time, and intentionally for the first time in a concentrated way. So, and then also I see for myself and in other people, a place to safely unfurl as a full human being, and to do a lot of inner exploration, and then to take that inner exploration and figure out ways to apply it out in the world, in very many different ways.
Can you say something about the different ways for you that it has gotten applied?
Yes. Do you have 2 hours? If you have 2 hours, I'll give you a snapshot. No, it's well, I as soon as I was ordained for Chime, this is not a typical Chime path, but I became a pastor of UU Church. I mean, I wasn't seeking that. It just, my internship experience kind of led me to that, and I'm finishing my 6th year as a pastor of a church. Again, that's not the typical Chime path, but
Right.
I becoming more of an overt, intentional spiritual being. That was one way that I applied it. It shows up in my songcraft, the things I write about. It shows up in my relationship with friends and family, and how much self-awareness I have in my communication and expression and all the different work that I do in the world. So it's kind of an immersive, full being affect from this experience. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, as you're talking, all of you are talking, I feel what a profound experience and a profound influence it's been in all your lives.
I
I mean,
believe that's true.
yeah,
Surely
that
for me,
really
yeah.
says something. That really, really says something. So, can you, maybe Lisa, you would be the person to describe um, something about, like, what does the program actually look like? People apply, and once they're accepted, what happens in those 2 years?
Yeah, there are several different components of the program. Each student applies and is accepted to a particular cohort. So we have cohorts that meet one night per week in person in our classroom in Portland. There's also a cohort that meets online one night per week on Zoom. So they have their weekly classes online. And then we have another cohort that meets fully online. So they meet for their classes online. Each of the in-person, and we call it a blended cohort, come together for an in-person workshop each one weekend per month, for Saturday and Sunday. We are piloting this coming fall a cohort that will do their workshop work asynchronously, so they will not need to come to Portland to gather for those in-person monthly workshops. In addition to those classes and the workshop content, students are reading books, writing reflections, and doing 150 hours of community service each year. The first year, it's volunteer service of any type. The second year, it's a focused internship. Craig mentioned his internship. So those are the components of the program. And I would emphasize two parts. One is the relationships of the cohort. The relationships between classmates becomes really foundational, that there's sort of a circular learning style. The other component of that is each week we have specific content area facilitators coming in to facilitate the classes. So students are exposed to 20 to 30 guest facilitators over the course of a year. So they get many different perspectives and a lot of different ways, invitations to explore their own spirituality through the lens of these guests who are coming in to teach, who are really facilitating teaching around the circle, because each person in that circle, as I mentioned earlier, comes with their own lifetime of experience, history, and lived wisdom that they bring with them. So really that resource sharing around the student body is integral, and the relationships that are formed are really deep. They exist long beyond those 2 years of the program.
I bet. I bet they do. What kind of um, teachings do the students receive? Like when you say there's guest teachers, can you give some examples of, any of you, of course, can answer this, but can you
Yeah,
give
I
some
might
examples?
nudge to Craig actually to offer an example, a couple of examples, and maybe describe the layers of the 2 years, the year of contemplation and the year of action.
Yeah, I'll accept that nudge, Lisa. Thank you. Lisa's my go-to spokesperson, so I'm gonna step up.
All right.
Um, uh, yeah. So, well, there's a wide variety. It's in many ways a sampler of different uh, faith practices, world religions, but not fully immersive, but touching on practices and with expert presenters around those things. There are components on grief and on forgiveness and just a number of topics that touch on our dimensions of humanity. Uh, oh, no, somebody else jump in. There's so many. The first year is generally again inward focused. So this really sometimes it's called the year of like churning, chime churn, where you focus on yourself and inside, and not that we ever stop focusing on ourselves, but the second year is a little more of outward focused, expressing ourselves in service and out in the world and with other beings. The cohort model is an essential part of all this. It's not, and you would appreciate this, I'm sure. We're not pouring water on thirsty sponges, with injecting people with information. It's all because we're honoring the experience and knowledge and wisdom of people. Some people come in very expert in certain topics of these, so we want to facilitate an experience where there is some offering of new information and knowledge and wisdom from various sources, and we're also helping people offer that from each other, and all do this in a dynamic group learning environment, that's interactive.
Mm,
I'm
lovely.
sure there's many pieces that can be supplemented there, but that's some of what I've got.
Yes. I don't know whether you want to say something to that, Myra. You don't need
Well,
to, but if
I'm just thinking how when I came to Chime, there was so much I didn't know about so many of the world's religions and practices that I was kind of like a sponge, and everything I learned, I was like, "Oh, I want to be that. Now I want to be this." And yet my own faith tradition, where I went into it thinking, "Oh, been there, done that. I know that lineage and that way of thinking." I learned new perspectives and new ways to look at that and appreciate that as in a whole. And so it was really exciting for me to really what Chime helped me do was to bring something I think I always had inside and learn to trust it and how to focus it and hone it so that it could be the best it can be for whatever purpose that we're here for. So um yeah, I feel I tell people going to Chime was the best decision I ever made. It
says a
spills
lot.
over into so many areas of my life, and I'm just I feel like I'm a better me and a better helper to the world, and really learned that my interests lie in marginalized populations. I worked with My Sister's Keeper for my internship, mentoring women who'd recently been released from incarceration. I've worked with the elderly and done the hospice singing end of life. I love working with the elderly. I've recently worked with the Maine Veterans Home, chaplaining there. And, climate chaos is a concern, and women's empowerment. So those are my go-to banners to carry. And so I feel good. I feel fulfilled. I feel like I'm making a difference in some small way.
Thank you. And I'm just curious what the internship was for both Lisa and Craig, since you mentioned yours. What
Yeah,
were your internships?
yeah, I'll say my internship was multifaceted. So one of the things was I happened to step into this little church and serve as a guest officiant for a little bit, and that led to 6 years of pastoring. Didn't expect that. I also worked in end of life, did end of life work, particularly with it happened with folks living with dementia,
Mm.
and then working with folks survivors of brain injury, and I had a spiritual support group with those folks. So those are some of the things that I did in my internship time.
Wow, quite a bit.
Mm.
Yes. And you,
My
Lisa?
my internship had two sort of separate, distinct parts. One was working with a small nonprofit called Renewal in the Wilderness, and I sort of went to Renewal in the Wilderness with a question, recognizing that a lot of what the organization was doing was providing people with um, spiritual resourcing, inviting people out to the natural environment to be spiritually resourced after times of depletion. Yet the organization didn't use words of spirituality or of faith. And I had a curiosity about how we live as spiritual beings in this world that would rather consider us secular, as though there were such a distinction to be made. So I found myself really curious about the number of, about the ways in which we can be living from our true, authentic spiritual lives out in the world. Again, in a world that would rather us not talk about such things in public. So how do we do the work we do in public really authentically, and also keep that quiet? Or maybe how do we make it safe for us to actually name that, oh, this is spiritual resourcing, this is spiritual work we do when we, feed someone in the nursing facility. This is spiritual work we're doing. So that was one piece. The other piece was I actually had my first book published at the end of my first year at Chime, and found myself incredibly nervous on the eve of publication that, oh my gosh, now I actually have to put it in people's hands and talk about the words that I have written down. And my second internship was around working with my voice, working with my ability to be present with people, sharing my story in public forums, and facilitating conversations around my experience, which was really only an invitation to invite other people to explore their own experiences.
Sure.
So that internship was really about voice.
I wonder if you'd like to say something about your book. I hope you didn't freeze. Let's just see here for a minute. I think you're good.
Okay. Well, sure. That book, actually, part of what brought me to Chime is in that book. The book is Without a Map, a caregiver's journey through the wilderness of heart and mind, and it chronicles my experience of caring for my father during his decline with dementia. And the book was really helped me to process my experience with him, but also to break the isolation of what I had experienced caregiving. And it really became a launching pad for me into Chime, through Chime, and supported me in actually having the confidence and the voice to write another book afterwards. But yeah, again, Chime, I think being able to weave Chime's network of support by building an internship around what was happening in my life, which was at that time the book launch, which was a big threshold experience for me. And so to have
I
Chime's
get
support and to have the internship supervision to do that made a big difference.
Yes.
Thank you for the invitation to share.
Yes. And your second book, what's the name?
So that is
Is
Arriving
it published
Here.
yet?
It is. It
Say
is. It's Arriving Here, Reflections from the Hearth and Trail. And I'll share, it actually originated during my second year at Chime. The seed of it was planted. I wrote it the following year after ordination, and it was published another year after that. And it really is a spiritual autobiography. It sort of is a process of recognizing here where I have arrived, but also the many glimpses of the sacred that had led me here that I had not noticed at the time yet, with new language and new experience that I now had tools to express and tools to notice that which had always been present with me.
Thank you. Beautiful. So I'm wondering, when you say ordained, what actually does that mean, to be ordained as a chaplain from Chime? What is it that is?
It's a great and fair question. I'll give a start, and then please, my colleagues, please chime in. No pun intended. Uh, we are, to be clear, we are ordained by our school. So and we are ordained as interfaith ministers. To be clear, the chaplain being a specific term. Not connected with our ordination, though we practice chaplaincy, many in different ways in the world. But we're ordained by the Chaplaincy Institute of Maine as interfaith ministers, and so ordination that's part of technically what it is. It's spiritually many things for each of us in our own ways. What that means, what meaning that has in our lives. For me, it's just sort of like my ticket to begin walking with intention as a spiritual being in the world. So it's not a medal or a certificate of achievement or any endpoint. It's the beginning of my intentional expression in the world as spiritual, and with awareness of what I have to offer, and my ability to start applying it to the best of my ability in service to the world. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
I don't know if either of you would want to add anything to that question or not. Just give you a moment. You may not. But...
Well, I'll just affirm, for me, ordination felt like an opportunity. Well, it was my opportunity to publicly declare that I intend to live from my spiritual life. And there was a power in being witnessed in that declaration, in that self-exposure. And now being in the position that I am in, that we are all in, to ordain on behalf of the school, on behalf of our legacy and our lineage and the whole community that we as three people get to represent. It feels like again, an opportunity to witness the strength and growth that we've seen in our students, and to witness the lives that they are stepping into, living from their own spiritual truths out in the world.
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. Very touching.
Mm.
So when people, let's say somebody wants to apply They're interested in the program. There's an application, obviously, to get in. And if somebody is accepted, uh, do they work with somebody in particular to help them through the program, to help them find or create internships? Like, what's the support for somebody who's just entering
Ooh,
the
I can
program?
answer that one.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of support for students. There is a spiritual companion, a fellow Chime alum who accompanies that person on their journey through Chime. There's faculty advisors, so we all have academic um, advisees that we help. There's a mentor that the student picks themselves, usually from their community, somebody they already know that can help them and see the difference that's happening to them through Chime, having known them before. There's the support of the other students, their cohort, Chime, the wider community of alumni. We've, in the 20 years that we've been a school and ordaining, we've had almost 200 ministers released into the wild, and and yeah, a lot of them are they come back to roost. They come back for annual things. They, we keep very much in touch because it is such a tight, supportive community in so many ways.
Lovely. How lovely. Yeah, and it sounds like both the spiritual development of each person and also how they then contribute their ministry in the world sounds like it's really unique and uh, serves both the person and the communities that they're in, which sounds like the idea. Sounds like it's sort of like that's the intention.
Yes, I would say it's as unique as the people. I
Yeah.
I say I have a ministry of music and mindfulness because I've combined different elements to do workshops that help people use vibrational healing. I do sound baths. I do guest clergy sermons on a Sunday at any given church. I do memorial services and weddings. I got to marry my daughter when she got married, and all kinds of rituals. I can marry and bury and everything in between.
That's lovely. So the ordination actually does carry some, what was it, legal import, I guess we could say, in terms of being able to act in that way.
It does. It does with the qualification that you have to, state by state, you have to pay attention to what
Right,
requirements are, and you may need to supplement or do all that. But yeah, in certain places it is a standalone credentialing, and otherwise we do what we need to do to
right, of
meet the state
course.
of Massachusetts requirements, or wherever we may be.
Wherever it may be.
Yeah.
Yes. So as long as I have you there, Craig, do you have any CDs or music, any ways for people
I
that
mean,
you'd like to
yeah,
share about,
CDs for people who happen to still have a CD player, right? So
or
that's yeah,
whatever? Yeah, what
right. Yeah.
I know I feel like I'm talking ancient history,
No,
but
I still have them, but the world is changing, as you know, pretty rapidly. I have been recording and presenting, and I was touring when I just before coming to Chime. I was a touring artist for a number of years in different parts of the world, and so I have stuff out there. The short version is on. If someone went to Bandcamp and looked for Craig Worth, most of my collection is there and can be listened to for free. Uh, but yeah, I keep active as a songwriter and a performer, though performing is different for me today. It's with the transformation that came from this spiritual journey, largely through Chime, is that I'm performer doesn't fit so much. I think I'm a minister every time I present music in the world. Not that I'm not preaching to people in any overt, any religious way at all, but I'm more aware of the spiritual power of my art. And I didn't. It's not that Chime gave me the spiritual power to my art, but it helped me find it and see it. And now that I see it, I can use it more intentionally, if that makes any sense. So, yeah.
Makes total sense. To me,
Mhm.
it makes total sense.
Mhm.
Yes. So would any of you like to add anything? Just that comes up spontaneously. Just give you a moment or two to see whether there's anything else you'd like to add to this interview.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to make a small qualification. When I was talking about our programming as that we're not just pouring water on sponges, I don't want to cast any aspersions on being a sponge because in many ways I am one, um, and a large part of the value came through that I got through Chime was just the awareness of how spiritual we all are, and I have been, but I didn't call it that. I didn't see it as that. So I felt maybe like a sponge needing water on me, and I got a lot of new information and new insight. But largely, I got along with that, I got an incredible amount of awareness of who I am and how I am in the world, and that's the gift that just gives every moment of that I'm awake, in my interactions with people and in my creativity and in all ways. So yeah.
Thank you. And what I heard when you said the water on that we don't have sponges, whatever it was that the people that come with their own fullness too,
Yes, that's that.
and
Thank you.
we're
That
open to receiving.
that's absolutely so. And
Yes,
sometimes we get to help people see their fullness.
yes,
Uh, and all the while, I will say, I think we could all say this, while we're doing the teaching ourselves and the guiding and the advising, we're filling, all the time and becoming more aware, and are all, I think we would probably be able to say, all constant learners, and our
yeah,
students are all some of the teachers that we have, when it's all working the way we would want it to. Yeah.
right. Yeah, the giving and the receiving
Mm,
works in
mm.
both directions.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
I love the term teach learner. Whenever I teach class, I learn as much as anybody about myself and how to teach and other people. And it's, I just want to give a plug to our website, chimeofmaine.org, where people
thank you.
can go to maybe listen to a video of Craig's music and find out more about our program. We ordain interfaith ministers who serve with integrity, spiritual presence, and prophetic voice.
Very beautiful. Thank you.
Welcome.
And Lisa, I don't know whether you'd like to add anything or you've said what you want to say, but just an opportunity.
Yeah, the only little piece I want to put out there is the both and you were sort of just talking about that with the giving and receiving, but Interfaith invites us to lean into both and rather than either or, in addition to, not instead of, these sort of principles and practices. I think we carry them with us. And I was reminded of something you said at the very beginning about, and we've alluded to Chime changing our lives. I recall someone pulling my husband aside at a gathering and saying, "So did that program really has that program really changed her? As if it did something to me. And I overheard him say, no, she's just had an opportunity to become more of herself. And it was such a wonderful opportunity for me to see what was happening for me, which was sort of this opportunity to unfurl. And it's the both and. Yes, I've changed, and it's just more of me.
Right. You've changed into more of you. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for being here for this interview. I'm going to end it now, and we'll come back together, the four of us, for a few minutes.
Thank you,
Thank
Leah.
you, Leah.
Thanks so much.